Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Good evening. This is Grace, and I am on with Mike-Ellerkamp. I am your host tonight for Texas Authors Books, and Mike is a husband, a father, grandfather, a cancer survivor. And in the 1970s, he served both in the U.S. Air Force and U.S. Army as an airborne ranger with the 1st Battalion, 75th Infantry. His greatest hope right now, with this simple little rule, which is his new book, is to reintroduce the power and passion of the wisdom of ancient philosophers and teachers, expressing God's mission statement to love thy neighbor as thyself. Welcome, Mike. We would really like to know more about you. And how did you get here? How did you get to write this wonderful book?
Well, thank you, Grace. It was a long story. It's a short story, but it took place a long time ago. I was deeply involved in a Bible study church and had a falling out. And all of this is written in the book. So if you're interested in about that part of it, get the book and read it. I had a falling out, and that caused me to go out and start looking for things outside of, the normal, get out of the box Bible study, church going. And I ended up.
What I like about this book is it's non-secular. It's a secular approach to simple principles in life. And exactly who were you talking about in your book?
Who was I? Well, are you referring to like where I picked up the different
right? Yes, the philosophers and teachers.
And learned about, and each one of them I found Confucius first out of mythology that I got out of Joseph Campbell, but Confucius first, and then the Greek philosophers, Plato and Aristotle, and then the next is Buddha. And so each of those three people are all teaching the Golden Rule, and it just so happens that they're all teaching the Golden Rule at 500 BC. And that was just a stunning, remarkable, aha moment in my life. I'd had all this teaching in the Bible. I knew about the Golden Rule. To find it being taught by these people at the same time in history just sort of opened up for me that there was probably some sort of conscious connection, and that's where I began to just chase after that part of it and really get in and study the Golden Rule in detail.
So what were you expecting in the Christian faith? I mean, you were going to church, you were very Christian-minded, you had a purpose in your faith. Wasn't the Christian faith living up to that expectation?
Well, it was until this apartheid moment that I describe in the book. And the pastor at the time, it was after church meeting, and, he made a defamatory comment about apartheid being the way things ought to be done. And this is back in the 70s, so it's a long time ago when apartheid was all a big, political issue. And it just destroyed everything that I had been teaching, because it just was something that I couldn't understand a person of faith saying something like that. I couldn't
wrap your head around
that
it.
thing. Yeah, I couldn't. And it just caused me to get, to go out. I really, in a huff. It was a very, very low point in my life for sure. And it just sort of drove me away from the Bible study. Now, I've come 360 degrees. I've come back to where I study the Bible all the time, along with other texts. So I'm looking at all of the different scriptures, and I investigate that in a way where I can see linkages amongst all of them, and how they all are really trying to tell the same story. They're trying to tell the same story in their culture, in their time, and in their language. And that is going to cause for there to be different ideas or different ways of approaching a subject. And when we get the blinders on, and we don't want to just open up and say, okay, what this person is really saying. We can go to the Bhagavad Gita, and we can look at Krishna and Arjuna, and Krishna is saying the same sorts of things that Jesus was telling his followers, almost verbatim in some instances. So it's, we just need to open. I found that I needed to open up and realize there was a much bigger voice, and it was talking to all of us. And the key that I kept coming back to was the golden rule, and that's the reason why I locked on to that and then went from there.
And so the golden rule is?
Well, the way we see it in the Bible, most of us who are Christians learned it as love thy neighbor as thyself. The Jewish teachers also taught it that way, love thy neighbor as thyself. You see it often in the Bible presented in that fashion. Buddha did it on the positive side as a do unto others as you would have them do to you, or do as you would wish others would do to you. Confucius did the negative side. So on the front of my book, you've got a gold and a silver arrow. The silver rule is often called the negative version of it. And Confucius would say, do not do to others what you would not like them or would not wish for them to do to you. So he would do it in the negative side. Plato is also quoted as saying it in the negative rendition, the negative side. You see it in all kinds of variations. I've seen people say that they've seen there are literally thousands of ways to make a reciprocal statement that is a golden rule statement.
And what I like about yours is it's the simple little rule, and you're rediscovering it in our time so that we can better understand it in our culture, which today I think we are very much lacking in spiritual values. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely. People are trying to drive the wedge into or between what we feel in ourselves just as humans and what is being presented in a religious sense. And we can't seem to be able to grip or latch onto the spiritual sense of things without it having to do with some sort of religious dogma. And that's the piece. That's where I tried to make the book present this rule, the simple little rule, in a way that we can see it, we can understand its importance, and then we can begin to identify how we can put it into life's practice.
Now you have a quote here from Sigmund Freud. Would you like me to say this, or would you like to repeat it?
Well, yeah, you have it in front of you, and I would probably chop it all up. So, yes, go ahead and read it, and let's talk about that.
All right. Yeah, this is really, I think this is timely. The truths contained in religious doctrines are, after all, so distorted and systematically disguised that the mass of humanity cannot recognize them as truth. And this was written by Sigmund Freud. And this is in your book on Chapter 1.
Yeah, that quote was a one of those points in my life when I left the church. When I left the Bible church, and I started looking in mythology. One of the first books that I read in mythology was Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And the first sentence in the introduction is that sentence. That the religious truths have been so systematically disguised and distorted so as not to be recognized by the masses as truth. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, that was a piece of information that just lit in my brain, and I latched onto that as I began looking for the truth or truths. And there are things that we call objective truths, and that an objective truth is something that applies to everybody no matter what. Like a gravity is an objective truth. And things like the golden rule, integrity, truthfulness, honesty, those kinds of things are they're objective truths. They apply to all of us. Everybody understands that, you should be honest. Now, they may not be honest, and they may want to trick how that gets done and how it gets presented, but they internally understand about honesty. And actually, then the golden rule comes in and wish for somebody to be honest with them as they are honest with other people. Now, we can, the reciprocity goes the other way, and we can be, we cannot be honest with them if they've been treating us in a bad way. This is one of the things that always gets people when they begin talking to me. They want to go to one of those places with, well, how does, the golden rule doesn't always work because, and then they'll throw out one of the, the police officer wouldn't want to be arrested because, that wouldn't be what he would want. And that just is taking a childish perspective on something that is much bigger and broader than that. Police officer has a job to do, and he should do his job.
We're going to
go
in. Yeah, well, we're going to stop right here and let our sponsors have a word, and we'll come back with Mike Ellerkamp, and we'll talk more about the simple little rule.
Gatekeeper Press is a full-service publishing house and distribution aggregator that prides itself on offering the highest quality self-publishing services in the industry. Gatekeeper authors earn 100% of their proceeds, retain 100% of their rights, and work one-on-one with their own author manager who delivers a 100% author-centric hand-holding experience. In addition to working with individual authors, Gatekeeper Press works behind the scenes for publishers of all sizes, and due to its efficiency and quality, also white labels its service to other self-publishing companies. Gatekeepers Press' mission is to open the gates of the book publishing world by offering the highest quality services at affordable prices. To learn more or to read some of the testimonials, go to gatekeeperpress.com.
Bourgeois Media and Consulting, a book publishing consultant where creative inspiration is realized. More at bourgeoismedia.com.
Well, hello there, my friends. My name is Randy James, independent voiceover producer in the Dallas, Texas area, available to write and record a 30-second commercial, much like the one you're hearing right now. It's a great way to help increase awareness and exposure to your book title. It's easy to do. Simply call me and we'll brainstorm on a few ideas, and in a few hours, I'll whip something up and send you a digital file ready to use. Remember, call or text me, Randy James, at 214-762-1942.
Do you love to read great new ebooks? Visit ebg247.com. Be the first to discover the next bestseller. At ebg247, we have the web's largest selection of great new book reads, from that amazing new fiction or nonfiction to horror, romance, and fantasy. We even have today's best children's books. That's ebg247.com. New books arrive daily, and all ebooks start at just 99 cents. If you love to read, then you'll love ebg247.com. Low prices, large selection, and an easy-to-use website. It's all only at ebg247.com.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.
We're back. This is Grace-Allison, and I'm interviewing Mike Ellerkamp and his book, The Simple Little Rule, The Golden Rule Rediscovered. Now, Mike, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the details of the book. Let's talk about the 4 standards of reasoning and the Golden Rule. You have 4 principles here. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. I figured out that people just were flummoxed by the whole simplicity of the Golden Rule, and I came up with 5 what I call supporting principles. The second one, the first, let's just name them: wisdom, justice, moderation, courage, and discipline. In the second one, justice, I found in my reading through different scriptures all around the place, in all of the different scriptures that I've read, that we almost always come out with 4 different standards that have to do with a way to reason your way through a just analysis of things. And those 4 things are neutrality, you must be neutral, you must be universal, you must be consistent, and you must be transparent. If you can test in those 4 things and they test positive, then you're probably fair. You're probably approaching the subject that you're dealing with in a just or a fair way.
Okay, I want to interrupt you right here and ask you. Let's make an example. What example? I know you have an example here on applying the principle of wisdom, for example. How would you apply this in a situation?
Well, whatever we're dealing with, we just stop with whatever it is and ask yourself, am I being universal? And universal is, if it's good for me, it's good for the person that I'm dealing with, or the person that I'm in front of. So whatever's good for me is good for them, and vice versa. Whatever's good for them is good for me. The neutral is, it has anything that has to do with physical attributes: sex, weight, height, color of skin, hair, eyes. None of those things matter. Consistency is, we evolve and we change, but we must be consistent in the way that we deal with people. That we may find in the wisdom test that we have been wrong about something, and it's time to change our mind about it, and then we do so, and then we're consistent in the way we handle it from that point forward. We can't today say that it's okay for me to lie to my employer, and then tomorrow say to an employee, you're being fired because you were lying. That's not being consistent. And then transparency is, you're open and you're clear about how you're doing that. I picked that one up in the old law systems, go all the way back to Hammurabi, and he made it clear in the introduction of his stone that he created for his law system that it was to be put in the square to be transparent for all to see. And this is a theme that you see over and over and over and over again in Scripture. So those were the 4 big things that test justice in my supporting principles.
Do you have a personal experience with one of the principles that you can kind of share with us what it looks like?
Oh, sure. We can do one I like to do. I had a young lady ask me some time ago about global warming. We were chatting about that, and that's always a fun subject because people will have some very strong feelings about that. So global warming, okay, and that's a thing that where if we're looking at wisdom. So in my deal, we are intelligent creatures. What separates us from everything else is our intelligence. So we can't allow the animal side of us, the emotion, what has been called in Scripture the sin nature, we can't let that emotion, that animal nature, take over and have us do things that we do. We have to be wise. We have to think through, learn things, understand stuff. So let's just quickly do global warming. The young lady said to me, well, don't you believe in global warming? And I said, well, okay, possibly. We may be warming right now. However, did you understand that most scientists will tell you there have been 4 previous global warming events? In other words, we've been through glacial ages 4 different times in the history of the world. And we weren't around in any of those 4. So humans didn't cause those 4. How is it possible, or how can it be that we're causing this one? And one of those events, we were almost a total ice ball. And one of those events, there was no ice at all. So you've had complete variation between a total ice ball and no ice at all. 4 different cycles. We weren't in any of them. So, you've got to be you've got to think your way through these things and be clear, and not let emotion about somebody telling you that, oh my God, the world's coming to an end because we had a warmer summer than last summer. 200,000 years ago, the glacial ices were as far down as I'm sitting right now, and this was we were 200 feet under ice, so we weren't around 200,000 years ago. You've got to be smart. You've got to pay attention. You can't let emotion take over. When you get to justice, you got to test it with, universal, neutral, consistent, and transparent. Moderation says you steer to the middle of the road. Don't get too far whacked out left or right. And we can do that in anything that we do, a diet, the way we approach politics, the way we drive a car. You need to moderate. You need to steer in the middle. Courage says that the first three, we've thought our way through it. We've tested it for fairness. We've been whether or not we're just. We're steering towards the center. We're not getting too far left or right and getting radical and whatever it is that we're working on. Then we have the courage to follow through. If you don't have the courage to follow through, it doesn't do you any good. You just accept or allow whatever is coming at you to just run you over. And then discipline, which was the one I added, just says you've got to you practice. You've got to do this over and over, and it's every time one of these issues comes up, you've got to think your way through it. And
I think these are really wise principles, because to me, what it demonstrates is when you do this, you create confidence in who you are, in your ability to make decisions, and out of confidence, and you have better sense of values. And right now, we need those on our planet.
Yes, it creates great confidence because you have thought about and tested and steered, and you've got the courage to stand up for your convictions. And this is the thing that we're losing. People are just throwing themselves down and wailing about stuff that is not important. I mean, for heaven's sakes, there's people starving in the world, and that's much more important than some of the things that we're finding ways to get upset about. But it creates great confidence, and that's one of the things that the Bible and all other scriptures teach, is that once one gets into this mode of understanding what truths are and what the truth is, then you have this power comes over you that you feel much more confident and clear about what your purpose is and where you're going. And that's one of the things I hope to be teaching people when I get onto my speaking and coaching career.
Yes, let's talk about that. Thinking for themselves is a big part of your message. People need to think for themselves rather than follow social media and this texting and the fake news and all that's going on with the media. We have to create some boundaries here. So let's talk about where you're going with your message and where people can find you.
Well, the thing of it is that we have to get to the point where we get out of the constant noise, because it's just noise so often. It's just noise. There are important things for us to know and understand and be attached to. Frequently, it's best, for instance, we have a rule in the house where all phones get put aside. You don't have a phone when you're sitting around eating. We have to get back to a face-to-face environment where we're speaking with one another again. The technology is great, and it is a part of what we are as humans, and the technology is going to get even greater, and it's going to be more powerful. But we have to learn to moderate and set it aside or not pay attention to it on occasion when it's best for us to be, in a conversation, to be aware, to be knowledgeable, to be just and fair with other people about things. And so that's the coaching and the message that I try to portray. You can find me at mike-ellerkamp.com. That's mike-ellerkamp.com. Right now, it's mostly about the book. We are expanding it to get more into the speaking coaching piece of it. I'm available. You can find all my contact information there. I'm also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, so you can find me in all the different social media places. After I just said, put your phone down and don't do the social media piece. But what we do with that is we do it with moderation. We steer towards the middle and don't get too far out in the weeds with the social media.
Yeah, I know. You've got Chapter 11, education, which is change your mental attitude. Get me a little. Yeah, we've got about a minute left. We have a minute left to talk about that, and then we'll be going.
Okay, so that's a good one. Thanks for bringing that one up. The guy in that story, that's a true story. The guy in that story and I are still friends. We ski every year right up here in Colorado. He was getting ready to get out of the Army. He was poorly educated. He just barely could read and wasn't very good at math. And he was going to go become a welder. And he went to welding school in the evenings when he had a chance to break out of his Army stuff, and he got burned, seriously burned with some slag one night, and threw the welding rod down and said, if this is what I got to do, I'm going to get me some education and get out of here. And that moment in his life changed his life and his family's life forever. He walked out of that school, that tech school. He began to get tutored. He went through 8.5 years of college. He became an electrical engineer. He works for a very large company, flies around the world, works on big, gigantic turbines and electrical plants, and helps people make them efficient and run correctly so that they get the best efficiency to create electricity. He would not have been able to do that.
Mike, we are at the end of our show. I want to thank you for being our guest tonight, and we hope that you are going on this new mission of the simple little rule, the golden rule rediscovered. Thank you again.
Gatekeeper Press is a full-service publishing house and distribution aggregator that prides itself on offering the highest quality self-publishing services in the industry. Gatekeeper authors earn 100% of their proceeds, retain 100% of their rights, and work one-on-one with their own author manager who delivers a 100% author-centric hand-holding experience. In addition to working with individual authors, Gatekeeper Press works behind the scenes for publishers of all sizes, and due to its efficiency and quality, also white labels its service to other self-publishing companies. Gatekeepers Press' mission is to open the gates of the book publishing world by offering the highest quality services at affordable prices. To learn more or to read some of the testimonials, go to gatekeeperpress.com.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.